How's it going, everyone? I've got another thrifted find for you here today. This is a bass guitar I picked up for $150. It is an Imperial bass made in 1965 in Japan. It's got a gorgeous flamed back with a sunburst finish, plated hardware, still shiny after all these years. It's got a single piece wooden bridge. You can actually see the clear coat faded where it originally sat because it was completely unintonated. Whoever uh, put it there didn't really know what they were doing, and the guitar didn't play untuned because of it. But it's funny, sitting for 20 years, the clear coat faded a different color. And I'm missing a knob. These things are extremely expensive to replace, so I'm looking for one that's of a reasonable price when it shows up. And this pickguard with a sunburst finish to match is actually factory, and it's made out of wood. It's one of the nicer pickguards I've seen on a hollow body guitar. You have mic 1 and mic 2 because they couldn't really agree on a word for pickup back then, at least with the Japanese lawsuit era guitars. And I believe the reason they include that is because these volume pots don't actually cut the signal completely for each pickup. So these kill switches are the only way you could reasonably achieve that, and these function more as a blend knob for the pickups. The pickups are 4-pole. I think they're ceramic magnets. They're not humbuckers. They're single coil. It came with round wounds. I actually managed to reuse these when I reassembled the guitar. You've got your truss rod cover here. It's a nut style truss rod, so no Allen key, which I prefer, honestly. I was able to get the action decently straightened out, but as you can see, these frets are extremely wide and they sit extremely low. So you can't play this thing super fast, like you're not going to shred on it, and you're especially not going to slap on it. But for those upright bass tones, this thing was a killer pickup. Now let's go over a little bit of history about this bass. The name Imperial comes from the Imperial Accordion Company of Chicago. Now a lot of people don't know this, but back in the 50s, the accordion was very popular with the baby boomer crowd. If you brought an accordion to a party, you were the equivalent of the guy with long hair and an acoustic guitar playing Oasis. Now, when the accordion started to fall out of favor in the 60s, the companies were looking for something to manufacture that they could make just as much money off of, and they saw the rise of guitars in modern pop and rock and blues, and they decided that was the best bet. So they got in touch with an Italian company called Crucianelli, and they started selling their guitars badged as Imperial in 1960. Then in 1965, they decided to start licensing guitars from the Fujiken Gaki factory. Now, I'll go over them later because they didn't design the style of this body. This is actually reminiscent of an older Crucianelli guitar, which I'll show you now. This is the first iteration of the Crucianelli Florentine style guitars. You can see that it predates the year of our guitar by 1 year, and it has the exact same batwing style. Now, I believe that this is the design that the Imperial Accordion Company commissioned Fujiken Gaki to make and license the design from Florentine. Now, I want to thank fetishguitars.com. They actually helped me a ton with the research on this. There's a ton of information on this site about all kinds of Italian guitars. There's even sales catalogs and everything. It really helped me narrow down which particular model my bass was the basis of. So Fuji Gengaki was originally started in the 60s, and they were known for producing what people call lawsuit era guitars, which were generally copies of Fender and Gibson. Now eventually Gibson and Fender and even Ibanez began working with Fuji Gengaki to produce guitars. Some of the earliest Japanese Fender guitars were made in that factory. Ibanez guitars were made for a very long time, and things like Orville by Gibson and some Epiphone guitars were made in that factory. So ultimately what we have here is an American badged guitar that was made in Japan, and it was designed by the Italians. Now I'm going to cover my process of restoring this guitar a little bit. These are the original listings of the guitar. Not in bad shape, but you can see the thing was filthy. There was a layer of smoker's tar over the entire thing, which is what led me to having to strip the entire guitar to clean it. Now, as you can see here, this is a photo of the guitar completely disassembled. I had it stripped to the bare wood shell, and you can see every single component I had to take off. Now, a good tip is if you don't want to lose your screws, you can just stab them into a pizza box and label them right above with a Sharpie, which is what I did for this build, and it saved me a ton of time. Another good thing is possibly labeling the pickups as upper and lower, because there's specific lengths of cables, and I ended up kind of just having to guess, and it worked. So, well, I mean, I wouldn't recommend taking the wiring out of these things at all, because it's a complete nightmare. This is what the inside of the guitar looks like. Yeah, I just thought this was really cool looking. It's almost like a hall or something. And then this is what the guitar looked like after I got everything back together before restringing it. Again, you can see where that clear coat faded in place. Now this is the rewiring stage. You can tell I guessed wrong and labeled it as top and bottom when it was actually the other way around, and I kind of just had to trace the signals to the mic and back. When I was disassembling it, some of the cables, you could see they were a little frayed, so I had to solder them back in place. And there's actually a ground wire that comes out of the rear end of the guitar and screws into the strap lock, and I ended up replacing that with a length of galvanized steel wire, and I kind of threaded it through, fished it out, and then looped it back around, and that's why I have this towel down so it doesn't scratch it with that, and so the pickups don't scratch it. You can also see a washer that fell off the back of these. Again, working on hollow body basses, especially full or semi-hollows, can be a nightmare. Epiphone dots will have the output jack right down here, and they have the solid block down it, so there's almost no way to get to it. I would not recommend taking apart a hollow body guitar unless you really know what you're doing. Now I'm going to give you a dry demonstration of the pickups. This is both of them on. The pickups are actually slightly microphonic, slightly being an understatement. I probably will end up wax potting these at some point, but you can pick up a lot of actual non-string movement, which is something some people like. It's good for double stops and things when playing upright bass parts. I'll just set it to the top pickup. And then we'll set it to the bottom pickup. And now I'll demonstrate how the pots don't really cut out the volume all the way. I have that all the way down with just that pickup selected. Alright, now I'm going to play you guys a little tune. thank you everyone for watching. I actually really enjoyed making this video. I learned more about this bass than I really ever have in the amount of time it took to make this video than the amount of time I owned it. I actually thought this was made by the Teisco company until I started doing research on it. So this is fun for me. I hope it's fun for you guys. Check out my other videos if you haven't, and look for the next video tomorrow. Alright everyone, have a good one.